Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the 2019 Sloan Sports Analytics Conference. My name is Z Siddiqui, and I'm a first-year MBA student at MIT Sloan. And it's my pleasure to introduce today's panel, Ticketing Analytics, the Power of Open Distribution. It's also my pleasure to introduce today's distinguished group of panelists, starting all the way to my right, Patrick Ryan, co-founder of Eventellect, Brendan Lynch, Enterprise Commercial and Ticketmaster Agency Lead for Ticketmaster, Bobby Gallo, Vice President of Club Business Development for the NFL, and Gretchen Shear, Chief Revenue Officer of the Houston Rockets. Today's panel will be moderated by Abe Madker, the Executive Editor of the Sports Business Journal. And today's panel will last 45 minutes with 10 minutes at the end for Q&A. If you'd like to submit a question, you can do so via Twitter using the hashtag #TicketingAnalytics. The tweets with the most mentions will be selected by the moderator. And with that, I will hand it off to Abe.
Great. Good morning, everyone. How's everyone doing? Good? Give it up for Z and the other students here who are putting on this great event. Thanks a lot, Z. So this is your session. I know he said 15 minutes for Q&A. We're going to open it up even earlier than that. So when you have a question, just ask it. It'll go through the Twitter system to me, and I will ask the panel. I've asked each of, first of all, great turnout, huh? I mean, we were up against Ruben and Meek, and I thought this room would be empty. So it's great to see you all here. We're going to talk about open distribution. We're going to talk about the future of the season ticket. We're going to talk about data. We're going to talk about personalization, customization, all those things. I've asked the panelists to take a minute to introduce themselves and really their role in the ticketing ecosystem. And Patrick, I'll start with you, please.
Great. Thanks to everyone for having us. It's a great conference, and this with the CM panel, really like talking to these folks on and off the stage. Eventellect is really focused on making sure that we help content rights holders. Most of our business is focused around professional sports, making sure they're leveraging distribution. So when you talk about distribution, if you Google a team name and the word tickets, we want to make sure that we have their inventory properly merchandised on those sites, and that we're managing the inventory as well as the pricing in real time and providing back analytics to our partner teams. What I would say has changed in the world over the last 3 years is really the focus on making sure that the right tickets are on the secondary market. The secondary market's very powerful, but it can't be everything and the only thing to a lot of teams. And so we spend a lot of our time consulting with our partners around what tickets are most efficiently sold as season tickets, what tickets are most efficiently sold as on the secondary market, and then everything in between. And so we're at a very interesting turning point of ticketing, and everybody's getting a lot more efficient. And we just are happy to be part of the food chain.
Brendan.
Thank you, and thank you for having me. This is fantastic, and I'm excited for this conversation. The things I'm focused most on at Ticketmaster are our enterprise business, which is our products and services that we offer to content holders, and also our agency business. And that is leveraging our marketing capabilities and our premium services and our analytics for those content holders. And so it's a combination of a couple of businesses, and it is core to the distribution components, the needs of our content holders on their ticket sales and their season ticket sales. And so this is one of the perfect conversations for us to kind of talk about what we do there.
Bobby?
Yes, thanks, Abe. Bobby Gallo from the NFL's Club Business Development Group. In short, we spend the majority of our time, a good portion of our time, working with all 32 of our teams. And we're at the forefront of managing our ticketing relationships with folks like Brendan and Ticketmaster, and at the forefront of the open distribution platform that I think we'll get into this morning.
Great. Gretchen.
Gretchen Shear with the Houston Rockets. I am our Chief Revenue Officer. My background at the organization, I've been there 18 years, 18 seasons. And 17 years ago, we made the shift, away from Ticketmaster to a platform that was then called Vertical Alliance. It then became Veritix and Flash Sheets. It is now what you know of Access today. So our organization's history in the ticketing world is different than kind of the standard club team, and it's allowed us to look at the space a little bit differently through the years, and has provided us with a rich amount of data. And if you're at this conference, you know what that means to our organization.
So I think the organizers have put together a real interesting panel because everyone has a different point of view. We're going to kick it off with the discussion of open distribution because it was one of the biggest, has been one of the biggest stories in the ticketing space. I want to ask the panelists, it's a jump ball, maybe Bobby, you jump in, or Brendan, open distribution, really what does it mean for you and what do you see as the benefits?
Sure. I think for us it's pretty simple and straightforward. You know, everything we do, everything we look at is through the lens of our fans and what's best for our fans. And so when you think about it that way, it's pretty simple and straightforward. We believe that our fans should be able to buy tickets wherever they want or wherever they're most comfortable. If you're most comfortable buying tickets through Ticketmaster in that environment, great. If someone else is interested in buying them somewhere else, great. So we want to make sure that our inventory and our teams have the ability to push inventory out across the entire network, the entire ecosystem, which we think ultimately benefits our fans.
And that change occurred within the last 14 months, roughly, or give a timeline on that.
Yeah, so we just wrapped up our first season with the Open Distribution Ticketing Network. We're heading into season 2, and you know, I would say like with anything, tons of learnings. Tons of things that I think we've taken from year 1 that we're going to take into year 2 to make it, I think, even better, even more seamless, even more efficient. And again, all geared towards and looking through that lens of what's best for the fan.
Yeah, just to build on Bobby's comments, you know, when I step back and think about open is neither new nor is it really particularly hard, right? What's hard about it is knowing who your fans are in an open system, right? It's ensuring that you've got legitimate tickets in an open system. It's giving visibility kind of back to Bobby and the teams so that they can see what's happening in that open system. And it's making sure the whole thing doesn't collapse, right? And doing it in a reliable way. And so if you think back, right, with paper tickets, they can go everywhere. They're anonymous. It's essentially open. What the technology and the products are allowing us to do now is get that fan identity, get that fan relationship across that open system. And that's really where the challenge and the products really have made a difference over the last year.
And Patrick, how do you view the change in kind of the NFL system specifically?
Well, on the NFL side, I think what was nice was that fans could buy a ticket on a handful of marketplaces and then enter the stadium in that same app. So the ticketing being available on a native app for whatever their preferred channel was, I think decreased friction for a handful of fans. Where we see teams really taking advantage of it and where we see marketplaces taking advantage of it is really getting into customer segmentation and understanding that some fans are going to always be secondary market customers because they go to one NFL game a year, one Broadway show, 2 concerts, you know, and 1 Disney on Ice, and they're super serviced by the secondary market. However, there are people going through that sales funnel who really are a customer for a season ticket. And so the teams are now able to kind of look at more data to better kind of mine who they should target with the right product.
And Gretchen, no, one system doesn't fit all. You have a different style, a different approach. Talk a little bit about your system at the Rockets and how it differs from a more traditional open system that we're talking about here.
I mean, I think everyone on the panel has been pretty clear that, you know, it's open. Like, it's not a new word. It's there. Street brokers were open. StubHub is open. You know, you name it, and it's an open system. So is it endorsed? Is it verified through open? Like, what does that look like? I think the biggest misnomer is that most customers and most fans do not use the word secondary. So in the industry, we're saying primary and we're saying secondary, but most people just want to go, they want to buy a ticket, they want to give you your money easily, and they want to come to your game. Like, most people realize that there might be a lift, they might be paying more or less than face value, but I don't think the general fan understands the difference. They just want to know that when they show up, they can get into the arena or into the stadium without any issue. And so our model and our system provided us that digital capability very early on. And so, you know, we've been able to follow the fan journeys for more than a decade with a closed loop. So even if the ticket was resold in an open channel, it had to be transferred digitally. There wasn't a barcode, and we could follow that path.
The journey.
So we have an immense amount of data to know who is buying on a site that is historically a secondary site, who is a guest of a season ticket holder, how should we communicate to them.
And so for the other three, the perception of her point of a blended primary secondary model, do you agree with her in terms of the consumer doesn't really recognize the difference?
I certainly do. And I think that's, again, part of why we've taken the steps we've taken and, have done what we've done with the open, network and the work we've done with Brendan and Ticketmaster and others. So I completely agree. I believe most people now are going, like I said earlier, people have their preferences on where they want to buy, and some people are buying based on, location and they'll pay more. Some people are buying based on, they want to, get the best price. And that'll drive their behavior decisions. But I think ultimately people are shopping around and looking to buy a ticket that they know is verified and authentic and is going to get them into the stadium.
So go ahead, Brendan.
Yeah, and from just managing a marketplace side, as we sell through all the primary, our fans are looking for more tickets. And so it's great to have both the primary and the secondary right there. Because if you want that 50-yard line ticket and that whole section's been sold out, we have nothing for you unless we've got the secondary there. So that's been a big change that we've worked through. To enable the marketplace to have a ticket for every fan for every event.
And I think that, supply and demand don't live in their own silos. I mean, it's a commingled silo. And so, when the content rights holder is making the decision around how easy they want to make it for customers to find tickets on other sites, if a team is lower demand, they might want that lift from an open marketplace. And what I mean by that is that, SeatGeek and Vivid Seats and StubHub and Ticketmaster, they have weekly emails. And oftentimes placement on that email campaign can move incremental tickets. And so there's some teams that don't need that incremental lift. There are other teams that would desperately pay a high dollar to be at the top of that email campaign. And the marketplace is going to make decisions around what team or what product to feature based on if it's integrated, if there's a lot of inventory posted. So it's not just the SCMs of the world, it's sort of like the native email marketing and social media marketing. And so these marketplaces are making decisions based on demand, but also how much valid supply they have.
So that's to jump off to a good question here. I want to get right to them. Maybe Gretchen, you take the lead on this, but I'll chime in. What kind of factors do teams consider as they make the decision towards an open distribution model versus more of a system like the Rockets? Like, what are some of the decision-making factors?
Yeah, I mean, we were talking about this a little bit backstage, and if you're just looking at your distribution in a silo, saying, how am I going to let people have access to my tickets? Is it only going to be on my website? Is it going to be everywhere in the world? What do those relationships look like with those distribution channels? If that's the only thing you're looking at, it's really not going to drive your business forward. It's only a piece of it. You have to figure out your demand. Are you priced right to begin with? Are you segmenting your inventory in a way that's going to help drive demand or mask your building if you don't have it? And so I think the biggest thing, if you're looking at that, if you're in the ticketing world, is you can't just look at distribution as its own silo. You have to look at your entire ticket pricing, inventory management, distribution holistically.
Other points that teams should consider when thinking about the different models? Anyone?
So I think inventory management, kind of diving in there a little bit, sometimes teams don't give their own website and their primary market a fair shot. And what I mean by that is that teams that are not closely managing their inventory in terms of group tickets and mini plans and season tickets, what oftentimes happens is that those tickets are residing in a hold code when the fans are actually looking for looking for single game tickets. And so then the team has all these tickets tied up when fans are on their primary market and the fan doesn't see what they want, so they go to the secondary market. So we're now seeing teams, the NBA and NHL, they're literally coming up with their single game distribution strategy like now, and their on sales are in July because they don't want to tie up all this inventory in season holds that aren't going to sell as seasons, in group ticket holds that aren't going to sell as groups. They want to give, you've got to give your primary market a chance to sell the ticket, and then the secondary market can supplement it.
Questions for Bobby and Brendan, for me, would be learnings. You talked about learnings in year one of the new system. Were there pain points? What were the learnings? What could change in year two?
Yeah, I think one of the biggest learnings for us is, as we kind of put the platform in place, that once we have everything kind of geared correctly in the marketplace, our marketing is what will win the day. That is a combination of better data that we have flowing back into the system. It's having a really fan-friendly, mobile-enhanced marketplace, and really great marketing team that knows how to optimize that, not just across emails, but SEM, programmatic, social, et cetera. And so when you get the whole system working really well, we had fantastic results on resale, but also way better on primary as well. And that's with a lot of inventory on the site. And so the results kind of spoke to the whole system working really well. And open was a component of it, but we were really happy with our performance for this year in the NFL.
Yeah, I think, just to piggyback, I think, for us, when you look at year one, I think go back or rewind 2 years ago, we had about 10% of our fans entering our stadiums with a mobile ticket or a ticket on their phone. This year, that leapfrogged all the way up to over 50%.
So I'm sorry, it went from 10% to over 50%.
Yeah,
wow.
to over 50% in 1 year. So that's one. Two, because of people using more mobile tickets and people transferring tickets and us being able to collect all of that data across all of these platforms, I think we were somewhere in the neighborhood of almost 2 million new names to file or new names to the database across the league, right? And it kind of speaks to, and the reason I bring that up is it speaks to everything everyone is saying. All of that is data. Right. All of that is information that we didn't have. All of that information allows us now to know who's coming to our stadiums. Maybe in the past we didn't know as many people that were coming. We knew our season ticket holders, but we extend beyond that, and it allows us to customize and cater the game day experience in ways that maybe we weren't able to do even just a year ago.
So a real quick follow-up on that. So with you and when Brian Lafemina was there,
yep.
When you were selling this up to ownership and to Commissioner Goodell, was it a data play?
Yeah, I think it was a few things. I think it was certainly data was a big part of it. We've touched on this a little bit as well. Security and reducing fraud was a big part of it as well. And I think just again, we now and Brian always says this. You mentioned Brian. Brian he's been saying this for years. We live in a world where everything is customizable, right? You can sit here in the audience and you can buy something that you want to buy right through your phone, and it can be customized to whatever it is that you're looking for. You got the Netflixes of the world, you have Spotify, you have Amazon, you have all these different things. And a big push for us was, in addition to the data, in addition to the security, was we need the information so that we can create customizable experiences for people coming to our stadiums, so we can better understand what they want. You and I can sit next to each other. We may pay the same price, but we may have very different interests. And in most cases, the only information we had going back was, okay, if they're paying the same price, they're probably the same person, or they probably have the same likes or interests. There's no proof to that, and there's no reason to think that way.
And Gretchen, I was talking to one executive recently, says nobody knows more about their ticket holders on the data side than the Rockets. And that's because you've been using a system that has been really digital mobile for about the last almost 10 years.
Yeah, I mean, our organization is, data first. So a lot of in our history, and every team is different. So if I was someone else, I may be in a different market, or our organization may be in a different place, and I may have a different strategy. But for us, we made the decision, granted it was Veritix and flash seats at the time, so the technology was there. So, when Bobby was just saying they made the jump from 10% to 50%, we were over 50% mobile in 2009. So a decade ago, we were over 50% mobile.
I'm not feeling so good about myself.
But I know, sorry about that.
1 year change,
so,
though.
right,
Well.
if Winston on my team is in here, he'll tweet the exact number. He's our data guy. And then by 2013, our team was in a space by demand, and we were selling out. So of course, we had a little bit more influence on what we could push. So we've been 95% digital for every event in our arena for the last 6 to 7 years. So the amount of information, so all of these things that we're flowing and that we're looking at, we've had visibility into that for a long time. So one of the misnomers is that, not that it's the right or the wrong decision, is that the only way you can get that transparency is to have partnerships from a open distribution channel, and that's not necessarily accurate, right? In some channels it may be, depending on where your provider is or what your strategy is or what your internal capabilities are. But for us, we had that visibility. Doesn't mean that tickets weren't being sold through open distribution. It just means that we didn't have kind of an official endorsed view of that.
Right, and we're saying here on this panel that, it's almost like state rights. Every team can make their own decision based on what they think is best for their ticket holders or even their marketplace. I do want to get to the questions. Great audience, great questions already. Let's stay with the data point of view, and this is for everybody. What do you see as the holy grail in terms of what ticket sellers can do with this data? Is the goal to customize the experience for every customer?
I think to customize the experience, you have to customize the sales process. So that's really when you look at, the Kagers, the Cores, the Microsoft Dynamics, the teams that are leveraging those tools with the customer data, they're seeing a much more rich experience for their fans. So an example that I like to use is that you might have someone buy 4 Upper Deck tickets, and the team in the old world would say, well, we should market Upper Deck tickets to that person. But when you kind of run it through your analytics and run it through Kager and run it through Core and look at other behavior in the building, you realize it's actually someone who owns a law firm buying 4 tickets for his kid. And that actually this person's a suite prospect. So you, rather than having it be called on an inside sales rep selling a mini plan in the Upper Deck, you have them contacted by a premium sales rep. So in terms of the holy grail of data, it's about getting the data, but then layering it into other systems so you can actually, act upon it efficiently.
And I think, I'm sorry, Brendan. I was just going to add, I agree with that. I think, holy grail data, holy grail customization, yeah, all of that is fantastic. You need the resources to actually go and execute and do something with the data. And you mentioned Kager. We've done a partnership with Kager at the league, so that overarches across all 32. We have the unique position to be sitting across all 32 and see insights that maybe the teams don't see. And the other thing is we're seeing more and more of our teams across the league at the local level invest in business analytics and strategy, which is a great thing, certainly for our league. I think, in the past, we've kind of always been looked at that league that's maybe a step behind in sophistication, whereas, I sit up here today and I think, myself and others in the group would tell you that we're proud of the steps that our teams have taken and, investing in business analytics and intelligence and things like that. And you look at our group at the league office, the Club Business Development Group was 6 or 7 people 8 months ago, and now we're a group of 16. So I raise that because, the data is great and it's important, but you need the resources to actually go and act on it.
Yeah, I was going to mention if you didn't, but Bobby's had to build out that team to really take the flow of the data that's coming back now. But the way we think about the Holy Grail in ticketing data is that chain of custody of the ticket throughout the life cycle. And there's 2 really key kind of moments of truth. The first is that purchase, and that purchaser is really important, right? And it might be the owner of the law firm. And the second is attendance. And this is kind of a newer area of knowing who owned that ticket at the moment of attendance. And across these 2 things, you start really having whole blooms of opportunity around insights. We've often talked about the purchase side of that. The attendance side, connected with the purchase, opens up analytics around ticket realization, right? And so we look at a season ticket holder, and they might be going to half their games, but selling the other half for above face. That person's very likely to renew. If they put them in a drawer, they're very unlikely to renew. And we have models that anticipate this and can say, is someone ready to be kind of reached out to save them as a season ticket holder, or is there an upgrade possibility? And so there's a lot to it. It all comes off that chain of custody, and I am really excited to see that attendance data start kind of hitting all the analytical brains around this room and see where we can go with that.
And our partnership with Kager, the ticketing integrated platform that we're building, realization rates is a big part of what we've built with them. It's a good point.
Yeah, I think one of the things that we've seen, and it's similar to who buys the ticket and who's the end user, is that you start to see trends. So there's people who we thought have been season ticket holders for 20 years. It turns out that they may own the seats and come twice a year, but they have 3 share partners. So in a renewal conversation, in the past, if they canceled, they were gone, and now we know there are 3 share partners who, fall into our data leagues, whether that's for renewal, a new sale, et cetera.
And in a building at your venue in a home game, the percentage of people in the arena that you know their identity is what? What percent?
Well, I mean, it's
a tough one, I know.
We have all the people that are coming in digitally, but if I come with Pat and I have 2 seats, I know me or I know Pat. We're not at the point where we know every single person. It's definitely something that I think a lot of systems are looking at. That's not a fan-friendly experience if you're coming with your spouse or your kid, and each person has to have their own piece. So I would say 90% of it is digital. Of that, most people have 2.3 seats on their account, so we know about 40, what is that?
But,
some analytics person do that, calculator math.
But your holy grail, your goal, Gretchen, would be to know, of course, everybody. I mean, if you could get a system that could get that, that would be ideal.
Yeah, I don't know,
no?
only because I'm not going to know the 7-year-old, right? And I'm not going to force the 7-year-old who's there with their parent to build an account. So there's some middle ground where it's not going to be 100.
Go ahead.
Yeah, just on that point, we've seen a jump, right, as you go to mobile ticketing and our presence system. We've seen a jump from roughly 1/3 to 2/3 of who we know as they're entering the game or the concert. So that's a huge move. I agree. You're never going to get to a perfect 100%, and you don't need to for commercial or marketing purposes, right? From security, you'd probably want to go a little further, but the movement is definitely to a much higher percentage.
I could tell we're at a great data conference because most of the questions are related to that. Does knowing a customer's non-sports and entertainment purchase history data serve any advantage in understanding potential ticket buyers?
I mean, I would think that, one of the biggest investments over the last 10 years has been in premium space. And so a lot of times teams and arena owners are able to kind of anchor the third-party content as the suite package or the theater loge box package. And so absolutely knowing that they're coming to your building a lot for that third-party content, you can layer in, we'll layer in 8 Rockets games. And then as their usage goes up, you change the product. So I think that the fact that teams are investing so heavily in capturing the fan experience in the way the fan wants it, I think that lends itself to upselling into the core sports product.
Look, we're in a relationship-driven business, and to me, anything and everything you can gather and know and understand about your customers is a good thing. I want to know the 7-year-old. I might not know through mobile or digital ticketing, but I want to know if a season ticket holder has kids and who their favorite players are, and whatever it might be. Any bit of information, I would think, is helpful and additive to the process, given what we do.
Any difference between the buying behavior between primary and secondary?
I mean, oftentimes, what's been relayed to us from some of our teams is that the primary, the customer is a price taker, that they're very tied to the team's brand and the offer that the team is making. And so they just feel that that's the right offer because it's what the team is putting in front of them. So sometimes when you see an incongruent primary and secondary market, it's because that team has identified that when they do an email campaign, they have a high conversion rate regardless of the pricing. So I think that that's one of the things that certainly stands out.
I think for all primary and secondary, it's a single game buyer, so that behavior is there. So we see a lot. The on sale, same thing, right? So it's you buy the game that is on a weekend, or it's the best opponent, or there's some promotion, and then there's a lull, and then it ticks back up as the game gets closer, and it's very similar on primary and secondary.
Yeah, to Gretchen's point, the data that we see is much more driven by the inventory that happens to be on the site at that point, rather than the fan behavior, right? And so that's a little bit of the difference. But to your prior question around fan knowledge outside of the individual game, this is a huge area that we spend a lot of time on because we have the scale to see all these concerts, see the genres that NFL fans like. And it's a service that the clients reach out to us around what content is going to work best in my building. And then also, how do I go reach out to fans in different ways? And that varies building to building, right? And so the fan base for individual buildings is dramatically different. And knowing what other content their fans or their local fans see in other buildings and their overall affinities are really, really useful.
Talked a lot about pricing. Couple good questions here I want to get to. What is the biggest mistake that teams make when it comes to pricing their tickets, and how do they fix it? Patrick, I'm going to start with you on that one.
Sure. You know, I think that sometimes teams are backing into a revenue number. And so sometimes they artificially start high, and then they have to kind of, back into the number, and they're sometimes liquidating tickets. I mean, I think, for example, 5 years ago, most of the calls we would receive, our account management team would receive from our partner teams was, hey, we need help with these low-demand games.
Right.
Now we get calls when the Warriors are in town, because they over budgeted, and the Warriors' road demand is actually down year over year. And so it's like, before it was like we'd help with a bad game and then leverage it into, we'd get additional tickets to the good games. Now it's like we're paying full price for the really high demand games, but we're getting access to some of the games the team was under budget in. And so I think it's about having just a holistic strategy and trying to, as best possible, not back into a number and really just look at what the market's telling you. Dynamic pricing is an effective tool, but if you price it too high, you don't get the sale and then you don't get the data. So we really believe pricing is more a function of pacing, how quickly our tickets pricing, and then using our proprietary software to increase the price as pacing picks up. And we're not tied to a game-by-game budget, so we've got a little bit more flexibility to help our partners in different ways.
Other thoughts on mistakes teams make when it comes to pricing?
Totally echo the need for a plan up front, so you can address your whole season and the whole sales cycle. Thing one. Thing two is being able to dynamically change your pricing over time, and getting good tools around that is really key. And then thing three is really testing and learning, right? And so there's a lot of fear around brand management. I don't want to go underneath my season ticket holder price, or if I'm a concert per se, I don't want to go too high because that's not my brand either as a content holder. But testing a little bit of that and getting some fan feedback, not just the price elasticity, but the brand feedback. Is this a problem? Do my season ticket holders have an issue with this? And with those three things, clients eventually get much more sophisticated in how they price their tickets.
Yeah, I would say, yeah, I kind of echo what these guys are saying. I think certainly a holistic approach is important. You think about our league, a lot of our tickets are sold still on a season ticket basis.
Right.
We'll have teams say, all right, we've looked at the secondary market data, but that's such a small snippet of the overall for us in terms of the 70,000 or 65,000 seats that some of our teams are dealing with, many of which are sold on a season ticket basis. The other piece is, we have teams, and we've taken steps over the last number of years with variable pricing and dynamic pricing, but when you look at our league, and we actually got up in front of our presidents and owners back in December and told them this. Wasn't sure I was going to leave with a job, but we told them, we are dynamically pricing our tickets. Teams have taken steps in that direction of doing a better job, but when you look across what our teams are actually doing, they're changing prices monthly, weekly. A couple of them are doing it daily. That's not really dynamic pricing, and we told our teams that and our team presidents that. When you think about dynamic pricing, you're competing against professional resellers out in the market who have every and any tool that they need in real time, and they can change prices and toggle up and down 2 or 3 cents to win a sale. They'll price a section, in a way where, they'll have everything overpriced, and they'll have one set of seats kind of at the marker just to clear, and then they'll just automatically, fill in the seats that were sold. So they're working in real time. They're managing markets minute to minute to minute. And so I think for our teams, they need to think holistically, not just use one data point, use everything at their disposal, realization rates and everything like that. And then also think about how we become sophisticated enough or more sophisticated so that we can compete minute to minute, because that's ultimately how the market changes. It's not daily, it's not monthly, it's not weekly.
Have you made a mistake in pricing in your 18 years there
Never.
at the Rockets?
Never. I would say the thing that we've probably learned the most over the last handful of years is, we do our very best to drive everything through our channels. So it's better for our eyeballs, it's better for our partners, we have that data. Well, one of the challenges is when you're shopping around and you're looking at, you may be a loyal buyer from the team site, and you go to the team site and you see our price and you buy it because you have that connectivity. Or you may be looking at the secondary market. You're doing it at different times. You might be doing it on different screens. It's not easy to shop around. Like, no one likes to have to do that for anything that they buy, whether it's a car, in my case, a refrigerator I'm super excited about, or a ticket. And so when we move to a commingled map, commingled inventory, whatever you want to call it, right, where you're looking at both those things, we're like, oh, now we're competing against ourselves, and we have to be much more willing to drop when we need to. And if you aren't monitoring it quickly and you aren't at the high enough rate on where the resellers are, then you're going to leave money on the table. And so you have to monitor it way closer than what you used to have to do in the past when you didn't have the transparency.
A lot of questions here on the future of the season ticket. Season ticket still the cash cow. How do teams ensure that they're not cannibalizing those season ticket sales by experimenting with open distribution? And Bobby, I live in Charlotte. Two of my colleagues sold their Panthers season tickets. They've been season ticket holders for a long time because of just that, because they were just going to, of course, pick the certain games. Answer that question in terms of how do we not cannibalize the season ticket marketplace?
Yeah, I mean, again, I think for us it's a little bit different because 90% of our tickets are sold on a season ticket basis. We have 10 games. You back out the 2 preseason games, 8 regular season games. Every single one of them is like life or death. They're all important. Your entire season, lives and dies by that one particular game, whether it's week 1 or week 17. So we're lucky in that regard. That being said, I think for us, we've started looking at things like right-sizing our stadiums, right? Making sure, that we have that figured out. What kind of products are in our stadiums, right? Because even though, 85 or 90% of our base is based on season tickets today, we know that's shifted, and we've had to start working harder and smarter at selling more group sales tickets, more individual game tickets. So what kind of product offerings are you putting out there for people to buy as they're thinking about coming and attending a game? So I think for us, that's kind of been, Abe, the shift that we've focused on is more about right-sizing and the product offerings and the value and the benefits that people can get, whether it's a season ticket or something other than a season ticket.
Other thoughts on the future of the season ticket as a whole?
I think that having areas that are exclusive to season ticket holders and that it's hard to get a single game ticket in certain areas certainly drives the value of the product and then drives up the value of the usage. I mean, the Houston Astros have done a tremendous job in their premium space because their Diamond Club and then their Insperity Club, which are home plate products, are sold out and they're rarely on the secondary market. And when they hit the secondary market, they sell at a huge price. And so the Astros intelligently added more premium space, but they put it out in center field, which might seem somewhat counterintuitive, but it's like, look, if you want to get in line for the home plate products, these are the people that are going to be next up if there's a spot to open. So driving some exclusivity in certain parts of the building. And then also, another team that we work closely with who are just brilliant in their customer service are the 76ers. And when you ask about, I want to know if it's a kid at the game, the 76ers service staff knows that. They have systems in their place where if someone doesn't come to 2 games in a row, they make sure they reach out to them. And during those reach out calls and during those touch points, they find out who's going to the game with you. And so that if they know that someone's kid's going to be at the game, you better believe within a handful of games that kid is on the court shooting a free throw. And so we talk a lot about data, we talk a lot about apps, but the value of an engaged sales and service staff can really add context to that data, and we're seeing some teams do a tremendous job of leveraging that, and so that season ticket becomes a lot stickier because you're helping the customer use it and get a lot of value out of it.
Yeah, just to echo this, I see a separation, right? The season ticket holder is a vehicle for getting to know your best fans even better. And adding that premium value to it is a way to engage with them. It's not just a package of singles. And if it were, the singles market kind of would take that over. And so it is that vehicle for increasing the fan engagement. And that's a different way than a lot of teams have looked at in the past.
Got less than 15 minutes, so I'm going to move a little quicker. Questions have been great, covering a lot of ground. Subscription-based models, we see the A's doing something pretty interesting in Oakland. I think there's a Warriors all-access pass. Do we see more subscription-based models? What should the audience be looking in terms of adoption of those?
I mean, I think that everyone's talked about, it's more about the mix of your product. So the reason why I think the kind of narrative of the season ticket is dying is because a lot of us in the industry were forcing people, when your product could handle it and when your demand was there, into a product that was too much for them.
Okay.
And so when your product drops a little bit and they've overcommitted to something that they weren't quite there, it's hard for them to keep that up. And so making sure that you have the right mix of product, the right number of game, subscription model for some people, that is not me. Like, I'm not, I want to know where I'm going. I might pay a little bit more to walk down the same aisle every time.
But there is a market for this.
But there's absolutely a market for that, and making sure that you have it in the right places to maintain your value for your season tickets, but also make sure that you're giving people who want to give you their money and want to come to their game an opportunity to do that.
Great line. Other thoughts on this type of model?
The only thing, I'm sorry, Patty, the only thing I was going to say was, funny enough, I think I sat on this stage at this conference almost 7 years ago when the same question was asked about, is the season ticket dead? And my sense is, or my guess is, it's going to be asked again in 7 years. I don't fundamentally believe that it is, or I reject that notion. I think if we're differing and differentiating our products and providing the right value and the right service, again, back to the human resource element, all of these things, I don't see any reason why there isn't a place for this season ticket. Yes, the world has changed, and so we got to be mindful of that, and certainly product offerings and things like that. But I only raised that because I think I was on this same stage 7 years ago when that same question was asked.
And I'll be fair, that none of these questions said that it was dead.
Yep.
Just, what other options are there?
Yep.
Yeah, so I think the subscription model works, in the right context. So for example, getting back to that law firm partner, if they're, when they turn 45 and they become partner, are they going to renew the suite? And I think that one way teams can insulate themselves against that is, the Atlanta Hawks use a college pass product to offer local college students a very affordable ticket, but it's barcode restricted, it's an hour before the game, it's not always available, but that fan knows they're getting super serviced in a unique way, and that builds a certain level of brand affinity. And so doing a ballpark pass or a subscription, I think it really needs to be narrowed to the customer who doesn't get to stay in that cheap product for years and years on end. It's more of a targeted sort of stair-step type product.
Got it. What are you hoping the tech companies, Google, Facebook, Apple, and Amazon do to help the ticketing business?
I mean, a huge testament to Ticketmaster, StubHub, all these companies. I mean, I think Amazon's ticketing business is the only public failure they've had.
Right.
Ticketing is really hard. And so I think that just that context is very important to understand. And I think that, the strides that have been made by all the ticketing partners has been phenomenal. I think it's kind of the customer data and making sure that the teams have the flexibility to post content the way they need to post content on these channels to drive certain consumer behavior.
Yeah, I'd say Google in particular and many of these firms are doing a really good job at trying to clean up fake ticketing sites. And it's one of the challenges we see is when you search for a team and tickets, you'll land on a bunch of sites that are a little scary. You don't want to put your credit card number into that, and as a fan, you might not know that. And so we've partnered with these guys to really make sure that they're looking out for fans as fans don't know where to go and as they find their way. And so when they can find a validated, authorized marketplace, that's a good kind of endpoint for that fan, and Google gets that.
And I would just say that's one of the challenges from endorsed, whatever you want to call open distribution is, where's the line? Once it's okay to buy in one place, how do you, it gets a little bit on some of the websites like Whack-A-Mole, because they look just like your sites. So it mimics your name, and if you're just a fan looking to come one time because your neighbor, your niece, your kid got into whoever team or whatever concert is coming, there's no way they would know. It's very, very hard. And so cleaning it up and being diligent and taking some accountability on that would be very helpful.
Quick question, Patrick mentioned the 76ers as an example. This one came in after that. Are there other surprising takeaways that you have all seen when evaluating the ticket businesses of other teams or leagues? Any other best practices you've seen out there that you're willing to share with the audience?
The Los Angeles Rams had a very interesting situation when the game got moved from Mexico City.
Right.
It was a high-demand marquee game, and I don't know, it was like a week's notice, right? And so you really saw data plus sales plus service working together in crunch time. And so like the Rams went to offer their season tickets access to the inventory. And then they had metrics about how many tickets could they move via groups. All the while, as one of their partners, we were sharing data in real time around our volume, and were there parts of the building we could take on more inventory, or were there parts of the building that we thought there might be a struggle with, and they rolled out a very low price point, and we complemented that low price point, and it ended up the market just soared at the end. But it was really because their sales and service team got ahead of it and was talking to their fans and selling more group tickets, and so basically you got to see 5 months of work play out in 5 days. And that was an unprecedented experience, and they did a tremendous job, and it was really an honor to have a passenger side seat in that process.
Yeah, I'd say on that experience, that 5 months of work felt like 5 months of work, crammed into 5 days. Just recommendation, don't do an on sale with just 5 days heads up. I'm looking at the team who shuddered when you said the Rams, but absolutely right. They actually went with a plan. They knew it was going to be a quick change. The NFL had prepped them on that, and the whole system came together and worked really well, from marketing to managing a large number of tickets that you don't normally have at an on sale for an NFL game.
I like watching. We made a decision. What's now going to make me feel very old, because it's almost been 2 decades, to go a different route and take a risk. And it was not easy in the beginning. It was painful. And we're very, very happy of where we are today. But it teaches, when you do that, you learn the business a little bit better at times. So some of these teams and leagues that are making what might look like a risky decision, kind of shifting from the norm and kind of the big 2-3 in the world, it'll be interesting to watch how that plays out over the coming years for them.
We've got less than about 7 minutes left, so we're going to go a little bit more rapid fire. I'm going to ask the panelists to be incredibly brief and quick on their answers. The biggest innovation you see with respect to access control in the next 5 years is? Patrick, I'll start with you.
Just the barcode going away. I mean, people still screenshot tickets because it's convenient. AXS actually, they can't. It's a rotating barcode, but seeing what happens when the barcode goes away and how much more data is collected and how much more fraud incrementally goes away through that process.
Knowing who is attending the game rather than just who purchased the ticket.
I think for us, we're starting to see teams explore cashless stadiums.
Mm-hmm.
What was the question again? There's been so many.
The access control in the next 5 years.
Yeah, I mean, I think speed, right? So whether it's barless, it's gonna put pressure on everything, and how stadiums and arenas can keep up with that.
And real quick on cashless, I know that we've got the Rays. I heard an NFL team's announcing something soon. I mean, the benefit there is speed and data.
Yeah, speed and data, and again, we touched on some of the points earlier, Abe. I think we had 5 teams last year that were fully mobile. We're going to have up to 10 this year, so the efficiencies around it.
Bobby mentioned the question that he always gets asked here about this. So I'll start with Gretchen, work my way down. When we do this panel in 5 years, what will be the question that will be asked of you then?
Is the season ticket dead? Right?
Is the season ticket dead?
What's going on with season tickets? Yes.
I think it'll be, are you truly able to press one click on Instagram and then get the ticket in your Instagram app and get in the stadium?
Interesting. The question here, the executive in sports business that you're keeping an eye on most closely and why over the next 2 years is? Bobby Gallo, start with you.
You mentioned him earlier, man. I got to go with my man, Brian LaFamina. I'm excited to see where he lands next. He raised me in this business, so I wouldn't be sitting up here answering questions about the season ticket if it weren't for Brian. So that's what I have my eye on.
Brendan, who? Who are you watching?
I'm not going to make or lose friends on this. I think the trend that I've seen is diversity amongst ticketing execs, and I can't wait to see the impact that that has on the industry.
Patrick?
You know, Nathan Hubbard's company, Rival, they will have their first public on sale in 4 or 5 months in Denver. So I think we're all going to be captivated to see how that goes. He's a thought leader in the space, and you know, certainly it'll be very interesting. And what I will say is that just based on his Twitter feed, he's making hires from a Silicon Valley angle, not necessarily a traditional ticketing angle. And so it'll be very interesting to see how that manifests itself on that platform.
And real quick, the differentiator of Rival is what? For those who don't know, including, like, I'm still confused.
So what Nathan revealed months ago was that
No
it
one
seems
knows.
like there's some facial recognition components that I think it might be the main architecture. You know, I will also say that I think that in the last 3 or 4 years, a lot of teams have created what people currently want and currently need, and Ticketmaster's done a tremendous job. Maybe they're able to see around some corners. But I also know Ticketmaster and StubHub's development teams, and I know they're looking around corners. So, you know, it's going to be fascinating to see it all play out.
And just so I'm clear, I don't mean that at all negative to Nathan. He is incredibly bright, and everyone's looking at Rivals. Gretchen, the executive that you're keeping an eye on over the next 12 to 24 months.
So mine's more personal. So in Houston, we have an MLS team, the Dynamo, and my 2 very good friends from the NBA just went over. So John Walker and Deanna Witter. So I'll watch to see what they do with that team there.
Deanna came from Cleveland. John,
And
of
John
course,
was directly from Memphis.
Yep. Okay, so this is for Patrick. The event over the next 6 months that you think will have the most highest volume, and for Brendan, highest volume, most energy around it, and the ticketing space will be?
High volume and high energy doesn't apply to golf, but the Masters ticketing business is certainly interesting to follow. There's been continued consolidation in the premium ticketing space with On Location and Prime Sport. I think we saw the impacts of tighter controls around inventory at the Super Bowl, and I think the Masters is certainly going to be, you know, we're going to see a little bit more of that. It'll be interesting to see how that kind of plays out, where they have no ticketing partnerships. So just by contrast, that'll be interesting. But then on an energy and volume perspective, you know, LeBron's not going to be in the finals, you know. And if you watch the crowds in Philadelphia, you watch the crowds in Milwaukee, it's going to be nuts. And so obviously rooting for both those teams. Wish they could play each other in the finals, but it's not possible. So we'll be rooting for the Rockets versus the 76ers.
There you go.
So it'll be a lot of fun.
Brendan, any prediction on an event that you think could be hot?
I'm going to say not the event, but I'm thinking of the draft and the schedule announced for the NFL. I'm excited for it this year. And every year it's been bigger event, and for ticket sales it's been huge. So I'm excited to see what we're able to do this year.
Bobby, any ticket sales component to NFL at 100?
In terms of...
I just know the NFL at 100, the program's big. But will there be anything in the ticketing aspect of it?
Yeah, it's a good question. As we're approaching our 100th season for the NFL, so you'll see a lot if you haven't already seen. Hopefully everyone in the room saw the commercial during the Super Bowl that ran. We actually started out with the notion of giving away tickets for 100 years to 2 fans per club. And we quickly realized, or probably not quickly enough, but we realized that there was a whole lot that went into that from a logistical standpoint. So we've scrapped that, so that's not happening. And I believe where we've landed is 2 tickets for 100 years for a fan. Yeah.
So that's an interesting program to keep an eye on. Okay, so from starting with Gretchen here all the way down, outside of a topic you mentioned previously on this panel, what is a sports business story you're watching most closely over the next year?
Sports business journal that I am pretty narrow focused. I'm not gonna lie. Sports business.
But the RSNs are for sale, and the ones in your market, correct?
Yeah, that is interesting. What happens with all of the esports teams is super fascinating. There's been a lot of teams that are dabbling in one, and so where those go as a league is going to be pretty interesting.
Bobby,
I'll keep it close to home for us in the NFL. Los Angeles. Huge initiative for us. Obviously, as everyone knows, 2 teams back in the market, stadium coming online in 2020. So living and breathing it every single day.
It looks amazing. Brendan?
Yeah, Patrick mentioned, but our own effort to roll out secure ticketing, again, close to home again, but this is going to be a pretty sizable shift in the industry, so can't wait to see that evolve.
There's been a lot of friction amongst Major League Baseball players and their owners, so that'll be interesting to see shake out, particularly as a lot of baseball teams have really started better marketing their venues and just making them that much more fun of places to go. So hopefully, can quiet some of those conversations and just make fans come to the ballpark through their food offerings and experiential aspects. So baseball is going to be fascinating with their CBA coming up.
Prediction, does baseball increase their attendance this year?
Yeah, they're going to.
They're going to go up?
Yeah.
Great panel, 4 smart people. I hope you give them a round of applause, and they'll be around if you want to talk to them individually. I'm not sure if I'm turning it over to Z or are we going to the next session. So I guess we're taking a break. Have a great